Live from Seville, this is The Twilight Show with Harry Waters, and you are listening live.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, whatever time of day it might be for you, good that. I hope that you're well. I hope you've been keeping well. We're under a bit of rain at the moment, which is very strange for here in Seville. We're not usually under the influence of rain, but that is our lucky status as it stands. So I'm pretty happy that the water butts are filling and the, well, I'd say garden. We don't have much of a garden, but the roses are certainly being watered with some nice natural rainwater, and it's nice to have because it hasn't rained for quite a while here. So that's how we are here in Spain. How are you where you are? I hope you're doing well. I'm sure you are. How is the weather where you are? I'm just logging in all forms and all areas so I can be heard from everywhere. How has your week been? Mine's been fairly topsy-turvy. On a personal level, it was quite a happy. I had mixed feelings about this week, particularly Tuesday. So I've been going to a doctor for many years since I came to Spain. When I got ill a long time ago, and I've been going to see a doctor here for probably 11 years. You know, with my annual checkups and this, that, and the other. So that's something that I've done for such a long time, and I went to a new one actually because my case had been moved here or there or somewhere else, and the new one was absolutely fantastic. It was really exciting to have somebody who was open, and it wasn't just sit down and say, "How's your daughter? Everything's good. Here you go. Sign a piece of paper and leave. I'll see you next year." He sort of stopped and said, "You should be coming more often. You should be checking in with us once every 3 months, not once a year." So it was really nice to have somebody kind of stop me and say, "Look, everything isn't just rosy. You need to be more cautious and more careful." And yeah, so that was excellent news, but also tinged with a hint of, perhaps I've not been behaving properly. So that was some news on a personal level. On other levels, it has been quite fun. This weekend, actually, I went to an incredible flamenco espectacular show, I guess is what we'd usually call it, down in Cádiz. It was fantastic. It was of two dancers. It was called Interconexión, which, if you're any good at Spanish, you know that means interconnection. And it was really nice because these dancers are. My wife has known one of them for about 20 something years. She used to dance with him when she was younger, but recently she's done photo sessions with them and reconnected with them, and it was fantastic to see because I saw her photos for the cartel, for the poster to show it. I had a kind of sense of what the show was going to be about, but they perfectly represented the show. It was absolutely it was it was bang on the head. The photos were absolutely out of this world. So to go along to the show, I went with my wife and daughter, and we went and enjoyed the show and had a nice walk around Cadiz and took some pictures, and it was just absolutely fantastic. A really nice way to end the week, as it were. And then, this week, as I said, it's on a professional level, it's been mostly about teacher training. I've had a few super fun classes this week. We've been writing a story with our lemons this week. We had some big lemons, and we decided to give our lemons. We gave one each to groups in our classes and said, "Do as you please with the lemon." So we had an activity of, this is a lemon, but what could it be? It could be a pillow. It could be a weapon. It could be a board eraser. You could even turn it into cleaning products. And then most of them decided, it could be a pet, it could be a friend. So they all kind of gave names to their different lemons, and they developed their character and their personality. And they gave a quick show and talked about each of their lemons and where they came from and their favorite food and stuff like that. Hi there, Poppy. Nice of you to join us. A real pleasure. So it was absolutely delightful. And then today we've been working on a story that they've been coming up with words for the alphabet just at random, and now they're putting together their story for their lemons. So it's quite exciting, and I'm interested and excited to see them in the next lesson, when they can have a chat about them, work on them a bit more, and then if they want to, they can perform them to the class or read them to the class or share them with the class. So it's been a long time building, but it's super fun and super exciting, and really good to see the students connecting with each other and just having a fun with a giant lemon, really. So enough talk of citrus fruits. Very soon we'll be talking to a fruit that perhaps thinks it might be a vegetable. More on that very soon, so don't go anywhere.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
At the National Higher Education Conference, Unison Assistant General Secretary John Richards opened proceedings with a damning critique of the government's approach towards university education, according to Unison's own website. Mr. Richards focused on out-of-touch ministers who failed to understand the current funding crisis and pointed out that the funding models across the UK seem to be broken. He cited the issue of limited government funding as causing a de facto cap on student numbers and accused the government of trashing the UK's reputation for higher education in Europe, leading to big drops in the numbers of overseas students. A story covered by Teachers Talk Radio News last week. Mr. Richards went on to assert that those in government do not understand the cost of living crisis because they've never had to face it. Strike action by those working in the HE sector has been part of a wave of action taken by unions across a range of public sectors in recent weeks. The last week saw the release of details of government plans to revamp children's social care in England. BBC News reported on the plan for more early support for families and the extra £200 million funding for the next 2 years. Last year, a review warned that tens of thousands more children could end up in care without additional funding and reform. The plan has faced criticism that many of the changes are being rolled out as localised pilots rather than a national programme. The government plans to put families at the heart of the reform and intends to provide better support for all vulnerable children in order to reduce the need for crisis intervention. There will be pilots in 12 local authorities which will deliver more early support for families struggling with addiction, domestic abuse and poor mental health. There will also be more family-type placement for children in care with relatives, friends or foster families. Other changes include plans to recruit more foster carers, a simpler process and more support for relatives or friends who take on children, a rise in the leaving care allowance, and support for councils to recruit and retain more social workers. Economic, Constitutional and Social Policy Forum Politia has published an article focusing on its views of the proposed changes to the school's history curriculum. The publication History, Whose History? The Battle for the School Curriculum features 3 historians' views on the proposals. The government's plan for reform came in response to recommendations from the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities. The plan for a new model history curriculum for pupils to see themselves as integral parts of what makes up the UK today was proposed. The essays included in the publication focus in on the responses of a variety of academics who all appear to conclude that there is no need for the proposed changes because diversity is already built in the current programme. Further details of the publication and forum for debate can be found on the Politia website. Finally, a school principal in a rural part of Northern Ireland has expressed concerns over safety after it emerged that recruitment of lollipop men and women is being frozen. It comes as part of a drive to save money. The current power-sharing deadlock in Stormont meant no budget could be agreed and significant cuts needed to be made. The principal of a rural primary school, Donna Winters, told the BBC that until recently there had been consistent crossing patrol staff that have been vital in making sure pupils can cross roads safely, but that they have not had staff since December. The school has had to resort to employing a patrol staff member directly and, when they are absent, teaching and support staff have to fill in. Ms Winters went on to point out that safety was not an area where cuts should be made. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, it's Safer Internet Week, with the official day being on the 7th of February. This year, the UK Safer Internet Centre focuses on Want to Talk About It, making space for conversation online. They've got loads of educational resources on the website saferinternet.org.uk, banded into 3 to 7, 7 to 11, 11 to 14 and 14 to 18 years of age. They are even translated into Welsh and have adapted resources for SEND and ALD. So, they have pretty much covered all bases. You need to take a look. But why do we need to get our young people talking about this? Well, let me try and give you an idea in one breath. With an estimated 5.16 billion people using the internet, that's 64.4% of the world's population. It's estimated that around 500,000 predators pose a threat to young people daily, with the main target being 12 to 15-year-old children. With a quick search of statistics from the internet, I found supposedly 1 in 25 children will be manipulated in some way this year, and 80% of predatory behaviour will be through social media. This coupled with only 15% of parents actually knowing what their children are doing online makes this an issue which definitely needs to be talked about with our young people. To get some perspective on this, every 60 seconds, TikTok users watch over 167 million videos. Data never sleeps. We need to know how to stay safe because the sheer volume of data means it cannot effectively be policed. Please send your thoughts amongst the 575,000 other posts every 60 seconds on Twitter at TT Radio Official. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello there and welcome back, everybody. So thank you very much for the news and tech. That was pretty impressive there, Steve, with your one breath statement. In fact, that's one of my favorite activities to do in my classes, to encourage students to focus on more on fluency and less on accuracy, and just say what they are thinking or say what's in their head in one breath. So that's that. I'm going to introduce our guest for today. It's somebody I've known for a few years now. We'll talk more about our origin story very soon. But Kanduk Katik is a fantastic lecturer. She's a trainer. She loves teacher training. She's of course an English teacher. So I am going to unmute our favorite guest of the day. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you loud and clear. There was that moment of nerves because your Zoom videos turned off. So I was sitting there thinking, I wonder if she's going to hear me. And there was that moment of panic and I froze, but everything was okay. And now I'm no longer frozen. I'm simply as cool as a cucumber.
That you are indeed.
I'm not sure how I managed to get that phrase in there. How are you? Are you well?
I'm very well indeed. It's rather cold, but I'm in a nice warm house. So what more could I ask for? And I've had dinner and I've got a glass of rhubarb spritzer with me. So all things are good.
I am in a not very cold place outside, but instead it's very cold in the house. I haven't yet eaten dinner and I've got half a glass of water. So I'm guessing you're winning at the moment, that's for sure. Certainly top of the list. It's a pleasure to have you on. I've been wanting to speak to you for quite a while. And finally we're able to make it happen today. So I'm excited to have you on. But I know a little bit about you, but our listeners, they don't know a huge amount about you. And unless they do, they may also know a huge amount about you. So as I like to ask all of my guests when they come on, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, but also involved in that, your journey through ELT?
60 seconds elevator speech?
I tell you what, I'm going to give you 69 seconds because this elevator is one of those ones where it's about to close, but somebody jumps in the last second, so it opens again. So I'll give you between 60 and 73 seconds,
Okay, fair enough.
or a teacher's
so
minute if you want it.
a teacher's minute, right? Breathe. Rubber
Yeah,
time.
it takes as
Okay.
long as you want.
Okay. Well, I have a very windy journey into ELT. When people ask me where you're from, I find that very difficult to answer because I'm your quintessential third culture kid. My mom is from Vietnam. I was born in Vietnam. My dad's from Germany. We grew up, my brother and myself, we grew up in Singapore, and English was the language of the home. So I did my whole schooling, kindergarten, all the way up to A levels. I did all that in Singapore, and then I moved to Germany, not knowing a word of German, but knowing lots of English. So I moved to Germany, did a couple of things. I worked at Subway, was fired because I was too short. I was a cook in an Irish pub.
Because you were
Didn't get
too
fired.
short?
Yes, you know those coolers in Subway, and they've got all their little things in 2 rows, right? Their little
Yeah.
buckets of veggies, onions, whatever,
Yeah.
and they've got them in 2 rows. And I
Yeah.
couldn't reach the one that was
Oh,
furthest
no.
from me, and they said that I was a work hazard because people be tripping over me. Now, come on, I mean, I'm not that short, and people aren't as tall as you, so surely they'd see me. But well, that's just unfortunate for them.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Good for you.
I lost that job. I was a cook in an Irish pub for a while. I worked in the English video store in Vienna. I took care of handicapped kids, and through a very roundabout way, I found myself in Germany, needing a job. Didn't want to work in pubs. Worked at Haagen-Dazs for a little bit, but I was eating the profits. So then I saw this ad that was a time, in the mid 90s where all you needed to teach English on the continent was to be a native speaker. So I sold myself as a native speaker. And since there were no profits to be eaten or no people to stumble over me, I was hired to teach English.
They were like, well, the height profile here, well, it doesn't matter. She's a teacher. She can reach wherever she wants. Perhaps you might not reach the top of the whiteboard, but that's fine. So that was how you began in ELT. So at that point, you were, and I'm going to say this, I hope it causes controversy. At that point, you were just an English teacher. Oh, he said it. Oh, he said it.
Oh, he said it. Yes, yes. I mean, at that point, though, it's true. I was in my youth. I was what, 24, 25, and I was just the English teacher. If you're teaching Berlitz, right? So that's where I started. I mean, that's the beauty of it, because Berlitz, they train you up. So you were trained in the Berlitz method. I think we did 3 days, and then you had all the Berlitz books, and it was all PPP, present, practice, and can't remember the last P, and then you just did it, and that's what it was. It was just teaching English. You didn't talk about other things. They threw you into a classroom. You weren't allowed to speak German to the students, so there was none of that translanguaging using the students L1, and it was just, you go teach them the present perfect, you go teach them this and that, and that was, it was exciting in the beginning,
Yeah.
but unsatisfactory after a point.
That reminds me a lot of now when I was when I started teaching. In about my 3rd year of teaching, I went to Vietnam and I worked in 4 different academies. I worked 7 days a week, just earn as much money as I could, basically. And one of the academies that I taught, they said, "Oh, we use the direct method," and I was like, "Oh, I wonder what the direct method is." In my 3rd year of teaching, thinking, I hadn't heard of many methodologies anyway, and it was. I couldn't believe it. It was an overhead projector with the overhead projection sheets with maybe 15 sentences, and all we did was drill those sentences, and then they'd repeat the sentences they'd learned at the end of the class, and that was literally it. There was one overhead projection of phrases, and we just read them to them. They read them back. Often I'd be going through there with my permanent marker, correcting the errors that were on the overhead projection, and I just thought, this is not okay. And that was the typical, you have to be a native teacher to come and work here as well, where, because all they want is the accent. And it's like, that is, even at that stage, I was like, this isn't fun, this isn't motivating, and this isn't useful. This is just parroting. So I can completely empathize with you in that moment of your Berlitz moment, as it were.
Yeah. That was like, I suppose it didn't help. I mean, I made a lot of money. In Germany, Berlitz don't have a good reputation because they pay below minimum wage and they only hire freelancers. But if you did as a student, it was good money because, you could do a load of hours. They used to have these immersion intensive courses where students would come in, at 9 o'clock and they'd stay there till 3 o'clock. You'd go to lunch with them. Berlitz would pay for your lunch. So obviously for a student, that was the best holiday job, so to speak, right? You just go speak English to somebody all day, get your lunch paid for. And I made a lot of money. I made a lot of money that covered me, helped me get through the semester. But I found that what I was doing in practice was kind of like at odds with what I was studying or learning in my studies. I was a student, then eventually I studied in Düsseldorf at the University of Düsseldorf, and I was studying philosophy, linguistics, and English, and I was getting all this knowledge and all this stuff, and I thought, well, these English lessons, they're so boring and they're so static, and and that's that, and then that's where things just changed for me. Kind of, I decided, well, if I'm going to do this, then I want to do it better and see how else I could do it.
Yeah, it is so important in a way as well to experience that way of teaching. It's nice to go, you start in an amazing place where you're trained by amazing people and everything is roses. That's lovely, but it is also important to have that kind of other side of the coin and be able to look at those students and then look at, your students now and think of the difference they're getting for, effectively the same amount of money. They're not probably not paying any more or less than they would have back then, like relatively. So it's kind of important to experience that as well. So you went from Berlitz and you trained, you studied, you then, you said you were studying in Dusseldorf. What happened next?
So I did my degree, and as part of my degree, we had the opportunity to go to the University of Wisconsin, Madison. And my professors suggested that I apply. The thing is, at university, I never really told anybody that I was a native speaker of English. That was back then. There was also that a native speaker of English is tall, blonde, blue-eyed.
Of course, yeah.
Not this short.
They're all
Vietnamese.
called John
Smith, surname Smith.
Exactly.
Not this Vietnamese girl who gets, eats the profits at Häagen-Dazs or gets fired from Subway, obviously. So, so many people used to say to me, "Oh, wow, your English is so good," and so I didn't tell anybody. So, I have to say, I'm not proud of it, but I took advantage of it because I got extra marks for writing my term paper so well in English, even though,
That's exceptional. That is brilliant. I love it.
And then at the same time, people go, "Oh yeah, and your German's so good," because they all thought, if you're kind of short and Asian looking, all you spoke at home was some obscure Asian language, and there's this cliche, isn't it? These myths people have, or look at someone and then we put them in a box. Oh, that's, that person's from Asia. And if that person's from Asia, that person's language can only be Chinese. And, never
Oh
heard of
my gosh, it's
Tibetan or,
it's
and
absolutely crazy. Here in Spain, it's exactly the same. It's Chinese. Everything is Chinese. Everything sort of, anywhere beyond India is Chinese.
mm, yeah,
And that's how they
it's,
consider it here. So yeah, I imagine it was similar back then, but you took advantage of it. So well
I,
done, well
I,
done.
this problem solving, 21st century skills, way back in
Exactly,
the 90s.
exactly. Using your initiative, it was something you should be proud of. Yeah, good job. So
Thank you.
what
Thank
happened
you.
after Wisconsin?
Well, so I applied, and that's where things really changed because I applied. I did British A levels.
Hmm.
I was a native speaker of English, but the system, the online registration system, just would not take my application. I had to do a TOEFL test, and I
Okay.
refused to do a TOEFL test because I'd uploaded my British GCE A level results.
Hmm.
I was studying for a degree in English. Why does it want me to have a TOEFL test? And I thought, no, this cannot be happening. This is just a joke. And that was a point for me where I thought, all these third culture kids, how do they feel? They
Hmm.
don't fit in any box anywhere. And the system just has that, you're male or you're female, you're white or you're Asian. If you're Asian, you're Chinese, you know
Yeah.
um and that really got to me. So I don't know, I probably kicked the computer or something, and I said, well, I'm not going there. If they can't see that, to be a native speaker of English, you don't have to be white, blonde, blue-eyed and have a name
Uh
like
huh.
Jane Smith, I'm not going there at all. So
Oh
i
yes.
I toddled along. I completed my degree. I got a job um, teaching English at universities in Germany, at various universities, built up, developed, got more work experience, kind of professionalized myself. Um, and then went to England, got a job in Canterbury at the University of Kent.
Well,
You
that's where I
said you
went.
were from Kent. Yes.
That's where I went. That was my university. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was in um, the department I was in, we were housed in King's College. It was
No,
nice.
that's where my dorms were.
Oh, I remember one time our washing machine at home wasn't working, and I used to come in and put a load on in the morning before work and
Oh
take
yeah.
clean clothes home with me.
I never did that. I never put my clothes in the washing machine when I was. I remember proudly ringing my brother one day and said, "I just used the least dirty plate I could find." Yeah,
uh,
that was. Yeah, not something I should be admitting now. I don't think.
no, not on public radio.
No,
Yes. So
exactly.
and working in the UK with their standards and quality assurance and all that, I think that for me was a big turn, a big opportunity in my life because they were very big on professional development, qualifying yourself further, and I got to do an MA in TESOL. I
Hmm.
learned massive. I learned a lot at UKC. Working at UKC, um, developed a sense of pride in what I was doing. Got to teach so many different courses. Got into EAP. Ended up doing not just teaching English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think you really you got nailed on a point there. You became proud of what you were doing. You had pride in your work, and that's a huge thing when it comes to, well, any industry, to be honest, any profession. If you're not proud of your work, then you're not going to enjoy it. But I think particularly with you know TEFL teaching, let's call it, it is looked down on a lot by a lot of people for various reasons. Some,
Mm.
in inverted commas, real teachers think, oh well, that's not, they're not real teachers because they haven't done this, that, or the other. Or a lot of other people look at TEFL teachers as it's just a tourist who wants to be able to travel around, so this is what they're doing. maybe that is the case for some of them. However, like the talk of it being just a teacher, it's so far beyond being just a teacher. Um, and we'll talk about that very soon because I do have a few questions about that. But before we do talk about that, there's something I'd like to talk about you. Um, that's pretty spectacular, let's be honest.
My love for tomatoes?
Your love of tomatoes, that's also coming up very soon. But just before we get to the love of tomatoes, can you tell me about being Teacher of the Year?
I did not see that one coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, my kids would say that's last year's news.
Well, it's to me that it's always relevant. If you've ever been nominated, if you've ever been given the Teacher of the Year, for me, that's forever.
That's true. That's true. That for me is just wow. When I first heard, when I was first informed, I don't know, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, what? Who? Me? That kind of thing. The competition was tough. It was rigorous. You applied. I mean, you've done Elton's and other things, and I mean, it's not just somebody putting your name in a hat and pulling it out.
Oh, it really isn't just that.
But it gave me that additional pride, a sense that what I was doing, was recognized by the wider community.
It's incredible.
I had my students behind me. I mean, I have a very, very good relationship with my students. They cost me a lot of heartache and headache, but I talk to them and I tell them, I say, look, I'm going to do this. And I told them I was applying for this and for the award. And I asked them if they, support me. And they wrote references, they wrote feedback. We collated that. When I read their feedback, I remember back then I thought, oh my goodness, I did not see that coming. I did not know that that's what you think of me, and that's how I've influenced you. And that has inspired me to do bigger things and other things, not just teaching English.
It's for me. I had a very kind of eye-opening sensation just today. Actually, it's in no way on any scale the level of what you're talking about. But I got a package from a class in Poland, and they'd all written letters saying thanks for Renewable English and thanks for the classes, and they really enjoy them. And for me, that today was something that meant more than any other thing that I've ever got or ever done. Like it meant more to me. So when you were describing winning the award, it felt to me like, yes, winning the award gives you the pride, but when you were reading their feedback, that's the real moment of, wow, this is worth it. Not I've been given this award, but wow, my students really get a lot from my classes.
Yeah, I reflect on that all the time. Just and I still have. I have a massively good relationship with all those. I mean, they were kids back then when I applied. They were kids. They were fresh out of school and everything, and now they're going into their MA. In their teacher training, they're going out to school, and we have. It's not all on me. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do all that if it wasn't for them. Because what I do for them, and I think the little bits that they wrote that showed me that they valued it, even though they sometimes they look at you and you kind of think it's in the syllabus, read it yourself.
Oh, I know that feeling. Now we met a few years ago. I think it was certainly around pandemic time.
Yeah, definitely.
When there was lots of online bits and bobs. And this was very soon after I went freelance, actually.
Yeah, that's right. You did a workshop for my teaching association.
People go. I'd used Zoom for quite a while. And then was the focus of one of the things that I was doing teacher training for. And you invited me to do a teacher training with your teachers, didn't you?
That's right. Yep. With our teaching association here in Germany. And you
we
came
came along with my friend
Owen.
Ewan.
Yep,
Yeah.
Ewan.
And he's now a teacher. He's now a real teacher. Yeah. He's a real teacher in a real school, teaching
Not
English
like us then.
in a real school. No, yeah, he's not like us fake teachers who work in universities and things like that. So yeah, we came along and we did a few activities, but one of them was about renaming ourselves and being used as that name, to use the naming function, the rename function in Zoom. And the idea of this was to use vocabulary for the classroom, and we went with kitchen vocabulary, I believe. And we also went with the first name. It didn't have to be Mr. or Mrs. We could do whatever we wanted. And you chose the name
Tomato. DJ Tomato.
DJ Tomato. And it, for me, it absolutely stuck. I mean, the next time I spoke to you, I just said, "Hi, DJ Tomato." And then from there, it's just seemed to carry on. And now, when I was thinking about today's show, I was talking to my wife and I was like, "Oh, yes, it's great. I'm speaking to DJ Tomato tonight." And she just looked at me like, "What are you talking about? Who's DJ Tomato?" I was like, "Oh, DJ Tomato, the TESOL Teacher of the Year." Just looking at me like, what are you talking about? But yeah, it kind of stuck, and it was, I don't know. I love it now. I love it. It's fantastic.
Well, that activity stuck with me, and actually many of the ones that you'd introduced us to, because like you said, we were in the middle of the pandemic, so I still had all my university students with me online, and we did that with the DJ something or other, and they had a lot of fun with that.
Exactly, because I think one of the big things about, when everything went online and stuff, that was one of the huge areas when it became, being more than just a teacher. That was
Yeah.
one of the areas where, that was a moment where students escaped their confinement and were there with their classmates, with their teacher, and it was a moment of escape from all the craziness. It was for us as well. So in that instance, for me, certainly the importance of the language that I was teaching, the words I was giving them, kind of dropped out quite a bit, and it was more about their well-being and making sure they were okay and they were able to kind of connect with other people. Not saying I stopped teaching them, of course, but that kind of extra added emphasis came on top.
Yeah, and I mean, for them having just people to talk to, because I don't know how things were in Spain. When we met, that was our first pandemic year, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And in Germany, the lockdown was pretty harsh, so kids were not in school. Everything was done from home, and that was even before the schools got Zoom or whatnot. And in Germany, you have very, very strict data protection laws and things like that. So they couldn't just set up Microsoft Teams or Zoom and say, let's meet. So the cohort of students that I had that year, they did their A levels entirely isolated, had no classes, I think, for the last couple of months, had no one to talk to. That's what many of them said. They didn't know how to work with Zoom. They were shy. They were self-conscious. And activities like the ones that you showed us, it didn't matter to me if we didn't do what I would normally do in 90 minutes face to face. At the end of the day, it was just touching base, seeing how they were, having a laugh. If we had to go a bit slower on the syllabus, if I had to pare it down, then I would, because they needed it.
Yeah. Yeah, they really did. And it was great. It was a lovely way to kind of meet you and connect with you, because it was at the time when I was, starting with Renewable English, and, my freelance career was kind of at this this crossroads. But I still continue to do other training sessions that aren't solely based around the environment, just because I still love teaching and I love teacher training. As do you, don't you?
I do. You see, I don't just teach English. Um, well, I got into teacher training really just accidentally. I mean, when I'd never done teacher training until I came to Germany in my current job. I've been here now 11 years, going on 11 years. And I was just thrown into these courses, and these were all, young people who are studying on a bachelor B.Ed degree, training to become public school teachers. And
Mm-hmm.
then I realized, number one, I knew very little about teacher training apart from having been trained myself as a teacher, you know. So like everything else, whether it was making Subway sandwiches or cooking in an Irish pub or, doing fancy Haagen-Dazs, Sundays, I just taught myself, didn't I? I mean, it was harder than Subway sandwiches, definitely. But
Well, it depends on how far away the ingredients were.
exactly, and how short or tall you are. Yeah, so in the beginning, I read up a lot. There was not a lot of self-study material for teacher trainers.
Mm-hmm.
The courses that I was given, and I've been doing the same now for 11 years. The one course is called classroom language skills. So that's English language skills for teachers, things like giving instructions, dividing the class up and things like that. Then I have a course, grammar, for English teachers. And those are my two babies, really. And then I have an essay writing course, which is easy enough. But, to design a course that's not just language, but also that gives them the language for teaching, that's not easy, because you don't have that. You don't have that on the CELTA. I've never done a Delta, so I couldn't say myself. You don't have that on an MAT. So, the MAT, so I did was very linguistic space, very applied linguistic space. So, but I enjoyed it. And then I found that if, I can do it with my students, there are probably other people in Germany who are in the same position, people who are looking for professional development, wanting to do better, wanting to learn more. And that's how I got into my teaching association and started to
Now,
organize training.
indeed. Now, I want to look at the main question. Now, I'm going to look at it in a very English teachery way, because after all, I am just an English teacher. So I'm going to ask you some questions, but I'm going to use stress to make the question different, asking for a different response. So, for example, oh, you're just an English teacher is the sentence. Okay. Oh, you're just an English teacher. That's the sentence. So I'm gonna say it in a different way, and I'd like to see how you respond to it. So, oh, you're just an English teacher. How would you respond to that one?
Me?
With the emphasis on you're just
Yes.
an English teacher.
Well, I would say me. So I may be just an English teacher, but I am a darn good English teacher.
Exactly, and then you whip out the award and you shove it in their face. I think now the one that's slightly more important than that one. So the next one is, oh, you're just an English teacher. You're just an English teacher. Now that for me has many different connotations with it. So how would you respond to that one?
I'm not just an English teacher. It's got a lot of negative connotations, though, when you put the emphasis on the just.
It really has. It has negative connotations in the fact that it's just English, as in it's the only subject. B, it's just English, as I mean it's only English, not even a proper subject. see the
Mm.
fact that being an English teacher is, not really a thing. So that's what really gets me when there is that emphasis on the just. So you're just an
Yeah.
English teacher. Like, obviously, I'm more than an English teacher. So what would you come back with? What things more than just an English teacher is an English teacher, or can an English teacher be if they go beyond the Berlitz or the direct method? What other things can we be?
Well, we're influencers, of course. We are also listeners. We
Hmm.
are very good listeners, I think, with a lot of the work that we do. And my husband's also just an English teacher. But, with the pandemic and being at home, and he teaches in adult education, so he's got all his classes online, and I hear his end of the classes. And when I hear the conversation, we're almost like therapists.
Hmm.
I mean, especially in adult education, and my husband's students are intermediate, so B1, B2, and they talk about their families, they talk about their work, and he listens and he gives them the vocabulary. And I don't know, he's got this he's very talented. He goes, they go off on so many tangents, and 5 minutes to the end of class he goes, all right, we've got to finish up now, and let's see, this is the vocabulary we did, and these are the new words you learned. And I lie in bed or sit at my desk thinking, oh wow, he just really wrapped that up really nicely. So we're therapists. I listen to my students a lot. You listen to your students a lot.
100%.
You
I think that point you made as well, like particularly with adult education, a lot of the time, learning English can either be an absolute necessity that they have to do for their job, so they feel forced to go along there. So if they have that kind of listening ear and opening up about, the issues they're having, or just their day in general, it's a place where they've escaped, and they're letting go of their work troubles, or whatever it is. You can show them that it is a safe place, and they can also enjoy it. It doesn't have to be just for work. And then there's the other adults who do go along just as like a hobby. And it's really
Mhm.
nice when you see them in the class. It's just there to enjoy it. And it does turn into, like you say, a therapy session.
Yeah, I mean, and we're cheaper than therapists, aren't we?
Oh, boy, we're cheaper than most things, to be honest.
um and um and I mean, English teachers, depending on who you teach, sometimes you're also guides. I guide my students. Um, I tell them my class is finished last week, and when I wrapped everything up, I said to them, I said, the stuff that we've learned, we've barely, scratched the surface. I'm here just to guide you. You now have an idea of what kind of language you need for the classroom. You know where to go and find out more. You know what you need to do for yourself. So I'm here, kind of giving you the roadmap. I'm not just saying this is the language you need. Yeah, I've given it to you, and you're kitted out for life. So we guide them. Um, you encourage them. You give them advice. I mean, that's what I do a lot with my students. And when I see what you do as well, um, giving people an awareness of, you know, in your case, environmental issues
Mhm.
through the medium of English. That's a game changer. That's when I think back in the day, in the 80s or 90s, when people were teaching English, it was about, this is what an English breakfast is like, and you're reading about the Smith family,
Yeah.
parents, two kids, go to school, mom stays at home and cooks Sunday lunch and things like that. And we don't do that anymore. We talk about global issues in our classrooms,
I think that's one of the
so
most important factors that we have here, and with the medium of English, it is something that is truly global. It is a global lesson. In every country you go to, there's going to be English is going to be taught in one way or another. So having that medium to talk about truly global issues is really important, and not just like you say. This is an English breakfast. This is what English people eat. Or let's talk about Guy Fawkes night. Guy Fawkes night. It's like,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
I mean, it was a great idea and everything, but let's not talk too much about that on air. Not with the government that the UK has at the moment. Might give somebody an idea, but you know what I mean. It was all of the culture, and this is until very, very recently. I mean, things are starting to change now, as you say, like in textbooks and in courses. But up until very recently, it was also British or American centric, wasn't it?
And very English language centric.
Hmm.
I don't know if you remember. I can't remember what textbook series it was, but when it came out, it was all very wow. Because they had David Crystal write some of the reading um
Oh yeah,
text for that, and it was all very wow, and it was all about the English language. There was one with the English language, the English as a global language. And then they had those stuff about Australia. So that was wow. That was wow back then, because you weren't talking about the Smith family who lives in London, or the who knows Adams family who lives in Wisconsin. But you were looking at English as a global language. So there were units about India, about Australia, so outer circle Englishes and things like that.
yeah,
But it was all still very English
yeah.
very English culture,
I
Anglo-American culture
remember.
based.
Yeah, I remember when I just sort of settled in Spain, kind of thing. I decided to take up a few open university modules to learn more about English and the way it worked. Because by that point, I kind of stopped and realised Spain is where I had to be, as I did have to be
Hmm.
here. But also, I loved it, and I did a course that was called Worlds of English, and it was all about the different Englishes across the world, and in all these different places. And I found it very eye-opening, particularly when I got back to the textbook and looked in there. And again, the pronunciation, brilliant for me because it's just how I sound. But
Yeah.
for 99% of English speakers, they don't sound like that. So it wasn't relevant in any way, shape, or form. So
Mm.
me going into the class and modeling that was great for publicity for the school, as it were, but it wasn't actually great for the students because it was just me teaching me. Hey, everyone, this is how
Yeah.
you like me. Nobody wants to be like me. It's a terrible idea.
Yeah, so
So,
that's us as English teachers, and I don't. It's when I think about it, it's quite interesting how when I think about how other teachers introduce themselves, and I've been thinking about that a lot. And somebody, you have a group of friends, and somebody goes, "Oh, what do you do?" Then you'll have one person who goes, "Oh, I'm a primary school teacher. Oh, I'm a secondary
mhm.
school teacher." They never say what subject they teach. They just go, "I'm a or kindergarten teacher," and then you don't have somebody in adult education who goes, "Oh, I'm in adult education." They don't do that.
No, they're a teacher.
That I'm an English teacher. And I think people just don't know what to make out of an English teacher job, because you don't have a straight path, a straight career path. And I
Hmm.
think, especially, with the work that you do, the work that I do, other people I know who are doing the same work, um, they, I'd say, I'm going out on a limb here, but I think 80% of those people, like you and I, did not set out to become English teachers after we left school.
No, we didn't, and it's a confusing path. One that involves Subway for you. I actually had Pizza Hut
Yeah.
on mine. But yeah, it's a very confusing path. Now, DJ Sam is calling in to ask a question, so I'm going to see if I can connect us to DJ Sam, or is DJ his or her or their call has disappeared. So they're no longer calling in. So thank you for calling in, DJ Sam. If you would like to call in, do feel free. Sorry, I interrupted you there, DJ Tomato. It was very rude of me. It was DJ Sam calling in, you see. We were all DJs together at the same time.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. I think we should
so
just be called DJs from now.
Exactly. Instead of teachers, what do you do? I'm a DJ. I'm an ELT
I'm an English
DJ.
DJ.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
an
an
English
English
teacher.
DJ because sometimes I feel that's what I do in class. I shift the tables and I you know move from one screen to another.
Yeah.
All sorts of different things.
I think it's you
Keep the
made a really
music going.
important point. Yeah, always. I love music. I think you made a really important point, and that was one of the introducing ourselves thing. And this is often where, for me, one of the big issues, it's not necessarily the pride in the work, but the kind of walking around with that label. And it is often the English teachers, or the TEFLers, as I like to call them, um, who come in and they say that, oh, I'm just an English teacher. And it is that view of themselves. It's not even somebody putting that view on them. They kind of walk in there and they're like, that's what I do. Oh, I'm figuring out my life. And people always think that if you're a TEFL teacher, you're in that stage of, I'm figuring out my life. I don't really know what I want to do yet. So that's what I'm doing. Don't get me wrong. Those people exist. But those people
Mm.
also exist in Subway. Those people also exist in Pizza Hut. Those people also exist in the marketing department of, I don't know, Harrods.
Yeah.
Those people exist everywhere.
Mm.
So I really don't like it when people say about themselves, I'm just an English teacher.
They shouldn't. They shouldn't. I mean, because also whether even if they're doing it to find themselves, and if they're in between jobs and they've got a job teaching English, they do so much more. I mean, school teachers, they work within a curriculum. The curriculum is given to them. They've got the materials they need. They've been very, very lucky to have all that training available to them. And English teachers, they have to do so much more on their own. They have to
Mm-hmm.
forge a path on their own. I mean, sorry,
Yeah.
no offense to any school teachers listening in, but school teachers, if let's say if you were, in the UK, you do your BA, then you do your teacher training, you get your qualified teacher status, and then you go into a school and you work your way up to form teacher, head of form, and so on and so forth. But English teachers, you've got to find your niche. And
There's no
because
you can't see a clear career path. A lot of people go into it and then think, oh, well, I'll be the director of an academy, and then they kind of think that's it. That's the limit.
yeah,
They see that as the glass ceiling. They don't see kind of beyond that.
yeah, and I mean, school teachers, you have your professional development offered to you. You've got your appraisals and all that, and in many places of the world, TEFLers, EFL teachers who work in various different schools. I mean, some are, are on less than minimum wage. They don't have
Mhm.
unions. They
Don't have
write
a
their own
secure
materials.
contract.
They don't have
There's no.
secure
You have a
contracts.
9-month contract. I mean, who can live in a world where you get paid for 3/4 of the year? It's not. It's not normal. And then it's 3 months
Yeah.
of see if you can find something. It's like I remember I got to a point when I had 10 years of experience, and I'd been a teacher trainer for 3 or 4 years, and it got to a point where one summer I was there. There was no job, and it's like, well, my
Yeah.
wife was an English teacher at the time as well. We had it. We have a daughter.
Hmm.
We had to eat, and it was like, well, you got to go and find work somehow to work for these next 3 months. Otherwise, well, unlucky, basically. There isn't that security to know that you have this contract and to have it written in. So I have another question to ask you, but it just for a moment, we're going to shoot off for 2 minutes, and when we come back, I will ask you some more questions.
Okay then.
And now I just need to move the mouse and start the ad. There we go.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides, and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
And we are back. So hello again. It was much less than 2 minutes. I said 2 minutes. It was not. It was more like 38 seconds.
So unfair.
Yeah, I apologise. I know you'd run off to brush your teeth or do some juggling, and I interrupted your toothbrushing
Make
juggling
some ketchup
moment.
out of
So
tomatoes.
exactly, yeah, exactly. It's what you do. It's what they say. It's what you do best. But I think your pizza sauce is definitely your finest. Um, so we've mentioned quite a few times this. You're just an English teacher, and we've talked about the other aspects that we bring. The therapist, the bringing in other learning, the global issues. And again, whether it's from the teacher's point of view or from an external point of view of being just a teacher. Now, there's one thing you have to think of, whether you're just an English teacher or whether you're an English teacher or whether you're an educator or whether you're a language facilitator or whether you're a learning coach, whatever you are, whatever you're doing in this respect, you have students. And at the end of the day, they are the most important people in all of this. You are not doing this for you. You are not doing this for your manager. You're not doing this for your director of studies. You are doing this for your students. And when you go into the classroom, it's for them. Whether you're in a primary school or a state school or a paid school, it doesn't matter how much the students are paying to be there, whether they're there for free or not. They are there, so they are what's important. And we talked about the satisfaction of our students and the feedback we get from our students being important. I think no matter where you stand on, am I just a teacher or not, we all have to bring it back in and focus on the students.
Right.
I got a bit ranty there, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where's that question?
There wasn't a question. It was just a statement, and then I didn't ask you. So yeah, the question that I so tactfully avoided: how can we help those people who think they are just an English teacher? How can we help them refocus that onto their students? Because if you're going into a classroom thinking, I'm just a teacher, you're not going to give it your all, and it's not fair to your students. So how can we help them?
Well, I mean, I think we just have to go in and oh well, it starts with waking up. You wake up and you ask yourself, what am I doing and what do I want to do, in these 90 minutes? I can just go in and teach the tenses and go away and say, oh well, I'm a just an English teacher, but I'd say it has to start with the person. I think it really, really does start with the person, because I could have carried on thinking, yeah, I'm a native English speaker, and this is the one job that hasn't fired me because of my height or me eating the profits. I'm in this job because I'm a native speaker, but it's just more than that. And maybe it's a little bit idealistic, but asking them to have a look at their students, look in their students' eyes, and ask themselves, what change can I make with them today?
Mm-hmm. I think it
It's a bit
can
dreamy,
get
isn't it?
well, but it's true. Like it's often hard. Particularly, I remember when I started teaching and when I moved, particularly when I moved to Spain. There were a lot of other British teachers here. I mean, there are fewer now because it's much more difficult to get a job here. But there were lots of British teachers, and now the British, having worked in the UK, and we're not great at being sincere. Usually there's a hint of sarcasm to absolutely everything. So when you are working with people who perhaps they are doing the job as a between job, or perhaps they're finding themselves, or they're doing it to travel, often they kind of get into this mindset of, well, I'm not paid enough, so I should be paid more, so I'm not really going to work very hard. And then you try and talk sincerely about the students, and what I often got from a lot of the teachers that I was training was, well, my students don't really care anyway, and it's not their money anyway, it's their parents' money that's being wasted. And it was really hard to kind of stop and be sincere with them and say, hey, that's not really okay, because the students, it's not their fault that they're not paying for the lessons. It's they are there to learn. Whether they want to be there or not, that's what they're there for. So I find it really difficult to kind of connect with teachers on that level and to get them to
But
stop and look at
Harry,
themselves.
you can't save everyone. You really can't. I mean, I do remember when I first moved. Well, when I was working in UKC, I was teaching on the foundation program, and we had many students there who would like to get through the year doing as little work as possible, right? Just euphemism for many things. Um, young kids who didn't, yeah, whose parents, they were all. I had many who were from the Arabian Peninsula or from China, wealthy families, and you had you. I had a mix of people who didn't care and who assumed, well, I'm just here for the year, and then if I don't pass my foundation program here, there'll be some other university somewhere else who'll take me. The thing is, though, is the job satisfaction. You can be in your job, whatever job you're in. You can go in at 9 and leave at 5, and you can be the unhappiest person and just do it for the money. Or you can say, well, look, I'm here. Let's see what I can make out of it. Life is what you make out of it.
Exactly, and it's a great example to show to your students as well. And the more enthusiastic you are, the more enthusiastic they'll be. Now, I want to look a bit at the internet and the world of social media. And for me, as somebody who's learning, it's since the pandemic, things have been great online in terms of learning, and as a teacher, I've learned so much from so many opportunities from people across the world. I was wondering, how has it affected your teaching in the classroom? This like global expansion of training that seemed to have come washing in.
I mean, my resources are definitely, I've definitely got a lot more resources than I ever had before. That's one thing. And it has also, I think it's been an eye opener for my students to see that it sounds a bit cliche at this point, and like a broken tape recorder, that we're not just English teachers. I mean, I share with them, people that I work with. I've had colleagues based elsewhere in the world who've come in through Zoom into my classes, and it's been such an eye opener for my students because they just see, wow, there's so much more to English teaching and their own teacher training than the university. There's just so much more to that, and that you can learn so much about teaching through networking and hanging out, so to speak, with other teachers working in other parts of the world. Makes
For
your
me,
job less lonely.
it really does. And for me, I found this really useful, as you mentioned, to my students, because being able to bring in other voices into your classes, and it's something I've worked with a lot of schools around the world with. I've got a few teachers that I work with there's a few in Poland, and there's a few in Turkey. There are some in Latvia, and just teachers all over the world who have now connected like this, and they do sessions where all their students get together, they all meet each other, and there is this kind of this mix of culture, and it's all done in English. It's based around English. But I remember I joined one recently, and it was all about New Year's resolutions, and so they were talking about the resolutions they have in different parts of the world and the ideas they had for a more sustainable New Year's resolution and stuff like that. And it's just wonderful to see these opportunities that are opening up. And I imagine in your role as a teacher trainer, your trainee teachers can get so much out of this.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, we've had sessions. I had last summer semester I worked, I joined up with a colleague whom I met online through, I don't know if you know him, David Heathfield. He does storytelling, and he ran a storytelling course for language teachers. And I met Glenda in that
Hmm.
course, and she's based in Peru. And what we did then was we both had, say, a course on conversation, a conversation course, and we put our students together, and my students had to speak English to these Peruvian students, and the Peruvian students had to speak English to my students. And there was, English was the medium, and they shared so much on about, each other's culture. They gained so much from that. So as learners, they they benefited, from being forced to speak English, and then also from the, if they reflect on it when they see what, can be done, to encourage authentic use of language. Because my students, they're all going to be teachers. They'll see that, the opportunities are there. You just have to look for them.
And it's so good that most of, well, no, not most, but a lot of these opportunities come for our learners and for other teachers as well, like training teachers, to see and understand that being an English teacher is more than just being a native speaker. Because when we look at ELT teachers, we often have this image of, an English teacher is that native speaker who's gone on holiday, a long holiday,
Yeah.
and we completely forget that well, I say we, I mean people completely forget the vast majority of English teachers who didn't become English teachers by doing the CELTA course, but they did in fact study their entire school lives and went to university. They just don't happen to have a British or an Australian passport. Perhaps they've got a Polish passport or a French passport. And when people talk about this, just an English teacher, it's ignoring all of those people who are such amazing teachers. And that's what I really love about this expansion that happened. Being able to just really show how deep the level of English teaching is, and how far it spreads. So you don't have to be a native speaker to do it, and you're just seeing these glorious teachers across the world. And I'm going to say most of them are much better teachers than I am. But but it's that thing of being just an English teacher. It's like, no, if you're talking about qualifications, most English teachers in the world have amazing qualifications.
Yep. And not just that. I mean, with English teaching, you can diversify in so many different directions. You can
Hmm.
do so many different things. It's not just about, going in with an English language textbook and standing in front of a class and drilling them, in various different structures. I know people, like you said, who are qualified teachers, done lots of training, non-native speakers, and diversify to become instructional designers,
Hmm.
right? They're instructional designers. You've got other people who've written books, they've gone into materials development, writing lesson plans to share with other teachers. And then you see, so many of them who, as they're diversifying, as they're, doing, finding their niche, so to speak, then they go into further training, doing another MA or doing a PhD, or people who choose to do the Delta or any kind of diploma. It's something that they've put a lot of thought into, because they want to become better teachers, and because they need to, in order to progress. It's, like I said, it's a very difficult journey for English teachers.
It is, and that's another thing that's often kind of forgotten. The personal investment, not only in money but also in time. If you do want to be, if you do want to be a career English teacher, as it were, you can't skirt around and learn nothing more than you learn on your CELTA and just pick it up day by day. You do have to invest time and often money into yourself as well.
Yeah, Yeah. And English, I find many, all in fact, almost every English teacher I know, every TEFLer, to use that term, they're amazing people. They're creative. They are so creative because you're out there on your own,
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
absolutely. And I like the point as well of teachers diversifying. This was a conversation I talked about a bit last week. Now, I do a fair bit of materials writing and teacher training, but I would still consider myself first and foremost as a teacher.
Mm.
I do fewer hours of teaching a week than I do of writing. I earn considerably less money. Well, in the fact that my lessons are volunteer lessons, so they're free. Um, so of course, uh, but yeah, I still see myself fundamentally as a teacher.
And a good teacher at that.
Well, oh, thank you. I'm blushing. You can't see it because I've got a ginger beard covering up all the blushing, but I definitely am. I'm as red as a tomato.
Oh.
There we go. I stole your one there. I stole that from you, obviously, from one of your online comments. So we've talked a lot about teachers, the views of the outside, the views of other professionals, as it were, other teachers. Now, I'd like to. The last thing, if we could talk about it, is the view of the student to us as just English teachers. I've said again with the inverted commas, because I know that it depends very much on the situation. Because I worked in a private school, and one of the students literally said to me, "You can't tell me what to do. I pay your wages," which went down very, very well. I definitely sat down and took that from that 12-year-old student. Absolutely, I did. So yeah, how can we avoid that view from our students? What can we do as teachers to show them we're not just English teachers?
I mean, that's what it all boils down to. Because if a teacher does have that view, well, I'm just your summer school English teacher, then it's going to flow over into the classroom as well. The
Hmm.
students are going to see it. But if you walk with your head up high, develop your own sense of professionalism, you know, um, look like you know what you're doing, you know,
At least pretend.
at least pretend. But you've got to have the confidence. It all starts with you. It all starts with you. Because honestly, if you really do think, well, I'm just the English teacher, then um you've lost all credibility there. It's kind of like the plumber who comes in to fix the piping in your house. You don't see the plumber ringing on your doorbell going, "Hi, I'm just the plumber coming here to fix your broken pipes." He rings the doorbell, and with authority he goes, "I'm here to fix your broken pipes." And you let him in. You don't think twice about it.
You've touched on a very sore nerve there, DJ
Were you a
Tomato.
plumber?
I was never a plumber, no. I was never even just a plumber. But we did have, on the 21st of December, there was a leak in one of our pipes. So we called the insurance, and they said, no problem, we'll send them right out after Christmas, because, you need to, it was right above our oven in the kitchen.
Ooh.
So on the 29th, he came and had a look and was like, oh, I can't really fix that. So then he had to wait for all of the furniture to be removed from the kitchen. So they had to call the carpenter to come in and remove all the furniture from the kitchen for him to then go up and fix the pipe. So he fixed that. And then we had to wait for the plasterer to come in to fix it. And then we had to wait for the painter to come in to paint over it. And we are now, we've had all that done. We're now in the final process of the carpenter coming back to put all of the muebles, the furniture, the kitchen furniture, the kitchen cabinets, and the oven all back in place. So at the moment, our oven is in the garden. So yeah, you mentioned a plumber coming along. Now you've touched on something there. It's too much. I've broken
Yeah.
down. So yeah, we've
I have
been
to say
living for a
though.
while without an oven. Go ahead. You have
Oh,
to say.
I have to say it. we've been talking about teachers holding their heads up high and being proud of their job, and like I said, it's an ideal world. You will have, like in every profession, that small percentage of people who are just sailing through, waffling through. you know it's a stopgap.
Yeah,
We have it. I mean, I had, back to the plumbers, I had some dodgy plumbers come and um do something in my toilets, and then they charged us like 2,000 euros, and in the end they weren't even real plumbers because they didn't fix the problem, and it turned
oh,
out that this was such a scam. So you have people like that,
yeah.
you know um and it's people like that who taint the profession, or who taint the job titles that we have.
And as you say, they are in every aspect of life, aren't they?
Yeah.
All politicians, for example, they've tainted that for me. Um,
Yeah.
but obviously, in some professions, there are more than others. But yeah, it's absolutely right. The 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 name is often the profession, as you say, is often sullied because of these few events that happen, and it is because in a lot of academies, when it comes to TEFL teaching, people do breeze in for a year and out again, and it's hard. But I think it's also a lot down to the academy or the place of work as to how they treat their teachers. They treat them as being more than just teachers. So from the
Mm,
employer point of view, that makes a huge difference. I would, if I had been treated better in a lot of the establishments I'd worked in, I would probably have lasted longer than a year and a half or 2 years. Because there was often, no training or,
yeah.
excessive hours or, often, or bosses that were bullies and stuff like that. And if, it came from above and teachers were treated then more than just people who come in to do the classes, then that would often kind of help eradicate this issue as well.
Mm. And I think that's why also, I mean, another way to kind of raise the profile of the profession, or give people an awareness that it isn't just English teaching, is the awards that different associations have, right? You've got the Eltons,
Hmm.
when it really raises the profile. It highlights that English teaching isn't just going in with a textbook, teaching the tenses and drilling left, right, and center. um, TESOL itself has their awards. There are various different awards. IATEFL has awards, and they have their conferences, and it's the publishers have it as well. Macmillan does the Simon Grinnell Award, right, to
Hmm.
help teachers who want to establish themselves. And you haven't got that for plumbers, have you?
Well, no, Plumber of the Year award. I don't know.
Oh,
You mentioned a lot of awards there. There's I'm going to do a humble brag now. Um, Renewable English was nominated for FASE, which is the one of the teaching associations here in Spain, one of the big ones.
oh,
They have nominated me for the Green Action Award. So on the 24th of February, I'll be going along to that. So you're absolutely right. These sessions.
congratulations.
Well, thanks very much. I've been nominated, so I don't know if I'll win. I'm hopeful, but not expectant. I have to admit. So you mentioned the Eltons before, and a project that I worked on was a finalist at the Eltons, and it received a judge's commendation for climate action. So that was great, but that was working alongside a publisher. This is like a nomination for Renewable English. So if I feel a
Yeah.
lot more invested in it, and I didn't mind that as a finalist. The previous one hadn't
Hmm.
won. I was happy to be a finalist, but I think I'll be a bit sad if I don't win. But of course, whoever does win, it's fantastic news. But yeah, it's lovely to have been nominated, and as you say, and things like that, and the letters I received from the school in Poland really do show you that you aren't just an English teacher. When you receive the Teacher of the Year award and you read the feedback that your students give you, you know that you're not just a teacher; you're a lot more than that.
or the conversations you have with, I'm sure you have that as well, the conversations we have online with colleagues, or, the conversations I have with students who've graduated and who are now teachers themselves. You, it, it's empowering. It's
Hmm.
empowering. It gives you such an awareness that you're not in this alone. You're not in this alone, and your strength, your success isn't yours alone, but it really comes from your community of practice, from the people you hang out with. Just make sure you hang out with the right people.
Exactly that, and that's one of our final thoughts there. For me, that community is so important, because you often think of a teacher as being kind of one person in the classroom in front of the students, and you kind of forget all of the stuff that comes behind it. So it's so important to think about your staff room, wherever your staff room may be. If it's a Zoom room online with people from across the globe, or if it's a physical staff room that's there, it's so important to think about your team, and remember that none of us are just teachers. We're all a lot more than that.
Hmm.
And on that note, I am going to allow you to depart. I'm going to go and have a salad, which I'm certain contains tomatoes, because I got some
Ooh,
tomatoes from the
nice
greengrocers
red
today.
tomatoes.
Indeed. So I'm going to say thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. It's been really lovely, as I knew it would be.
It was lovely talking to you, and I think I will see you in Harrogate, won't I?
I'm afraid you won't see me in Harrogate this year.
Scandalous.
I know, it's outrageous. Being a freelancer, I'm not particularly able to pay for the time to get there. But I think more importantly, my daughter is going to speak at her first ever event just a couple of days after Harrogate. So we have to go to Barcelona, where my 9-year-old will speak at the World Retail Congress.
Nice.
So that's kind of that's the reason I won't be there. But our paths will cross again, I no doubt.
But there you go. You're not just an English teacher. You're also a dad and a big supporter of your own kids, just like I am of my kids.
Exactly. And with that note, I'll let you get back to your kids. I'll go and get back to mine. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
You will.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.